First prize is a royal ride, Ford Ranger. Draw date Saturday, December 20th at the school. Tickets only $100. All proceeds for the further uplifting of the school. Tickets available at islandetickets.com. Sandbag Lotto opposite the Oval. Northern Hardware, Digger Martin Main Road. West Star Liquor Mart, Moncoco Road. Top Office, Belmont. Hearty Foods Arima. Charlie's Anchor Cafe, corner Anna Street and Aripita Avenue. Frankie's on the Avenue. Quasi Discount Mart, California. Universal Plumbing, Digger Martin Main Road. Woodview, Tragrit Road. GAK Electrical and Plumbing, opposite Starlight. Western Union, Tunapuna. VML Minimart, St. Lucian Road. Arthur's Minimart, Balandra. Alum's Pharmacy, Majuba Crossroad. Madison Bar, Digger Martin. Auto and Lotto Shop, Long Circular Mall. For more info, call the college at 622-1671 or the hotline at 491-1802. Queens Royal College, Christmas 3-car raffle.
It's Christmas time, and with your family you'll spend every evening watching a movie on WESN. The classics that fill your heart with merriment and cheer as we celebrate together the most wonderful time of the year.
This is my island in December.
This Christmas, WESN celebrates with you as the content capital brings the big screen classics.
Yes!
Gather your family and tune in to WESN from December 1st to 31st at 8 p.m. nightly for We Christmas Movie Classics.
Santa's coming to town! Santa! Oh my God! Santa here? I know him! I know him!
Only on WESN, Content Capital.
Si cogerle la desgracia, que golpe no llevaría. Que golpe no llevaría una mujer me llamaba, pero yo no le entendí.
WESN.
Another day in, well, I do find myself reminiscing quite a bit about when I was a child, what things looked like, how things felt. It just how much things have changed. It's kind of funny because I'm starting to also think maybe this is what, when people would say these types of things, older people, you see it in movies and TV shows, discussing change, how things have changed, lamenting the change, regretting the change, marveling at the change. I do wonder if there's a bit of rose-colored glasses with regards to how I felt about times gone by, because I still also distinctly remember when things weren't on the shelves in the supermarket, when I would see things on the television, snacks, chocolates, toys, what have you. And I basically have to tell myself, oh, well, I could never get that. And then maybe family might send some Reese's Cups down or chocolates, cereals, what have you, fruits. Well, maybe not fruits. I think I'm pretty sure it was a few years well before I had my first strawberry. Rose-colored glasses. Somehow, despite all of that, and then the marvel of all these things available and the progress that we made. Look, when you look at the infrastructure, the buildings and everything, what was life before the internet? And we haven't really done a good enough job updating our laws, and now the government wants to update a law. And I think one of the issues, if you want to really be a bit more fair and analytical, is not so much about is the law good law, the politics behind the law. And this is about the stand your ground legislation. I think it, in part, is to do with the fact that we're a young nation. We're a young nation that probably does not fully appreciate our legislature. Because when we became independent and a republic, essentially we looked at other nations and we kind of copied their homework. And now we're seeing some of the deficiencies of using someone else's homework. We didn't necessarily, to a great enough degree, or go through the situation and proactively write our own laws. Now that's hard. I mean, you have a pre-existing set of laws that has been created over a long period of time, and to some extent stood up to the test of time, relatively speaking, for however many decades, or in some cases longer. And why would you want to try to reinvent the wheel? Which is fair, but now we've reached the point where perhaps we've taken that too far. We want to claim to be independent, and yet we are not proficient at being independent. So now there is the whole situation with the debates on the Stand Your Ground home invasion bill, right? And you have government senators basically pointing to the fact, and as the newspaper reported, I'm not entirely sure, I can't remember reading the story myself. The AG was also the victim of some sort of criminal incident. But one of the things that bothers me is how much the law is being sold to us. And you've seen this throughout history, right? Obamacare was sold. It didn't necessarily do all the things that it was hyped up to be, but it was hyped up to sell it, right? It was a monumental task to get it passed. And I believe some people view it as the thing that used up Obama's political capital. He didn't, when it comes to domestic policy, he didn't really, I don't think, have any other hallmark piece of legislation. Because, I mean, it just took so much to get it done. Now, in this legislation, we're being sold a piece of legislation. To what extent is it going to solve all the problems? Because we're not necessarily hearing about any other piece of legislation. And I would argue what we need right now is leadership via cabinet, but also the legislative bodies. They are the representatives of the people, particularly the lower house. Now, one of the senators pointed the fact that he was, I believe he was awakened or the situation, Farsa already points out a somewhat speculative scenario, which is where my concerns start. What would you do differently if you were woken up at 4 a.m. in the morning with somebody in your face? How do you fight back then with this law? Now, his delivery was a bit cynical, but if you go beyond the specifics that he says, he's highlighting there's going to be scenarios where this is not going to help you, right? I think a lot of people, if you're faced with, I'm going to be attacked by 8 people, or I'm going to be attacked by 8 people with a gun, you would rather have the gun than not have it. But at the same time, it's not that clear-cut and it's not that simple. And to some extent, at times, the government's messaging oversimplifies the situation, making it's almost like war propaganda. I'm doing my part. You too can defend yourself. We want you to have a firearm to defend yourself. But it's not that simple. Which is why some people have already said, well, we don't want that. A lot of people aren't built for that. I have no problem with having the law, and I believe the AG is trying to say this is not the only thing, right? But we're not necessarily seeing, because you can't tell me that there isn't legislative things to fix. Just the marijuana stuff alone isn't working properly. And that starts with the laws as they were crafted. One of the things that was pointed to was, what about renters? And I think what was written covers renters, but Farisawari also asked about squatters. That's a whole other contentious issue, by the way. At one point in the papers, it trended to be a highly controversial national issue, and then it kind of died down again. And let's not forget, one of the largest victims of squatting is the state. Do we view squatting as illegal? That's one of those weird things where the heart wants to respond a different way to the head, because, hey, if you want to show compassion, change the law so that the people that are squatting are not in this no man's land where it very much depends on who engages them, the type of state response they're going to get, if the state is going to be heavy-handed or not. But then, nothing is in a vacuum, so how does stand your ground work with squatting? Because technically, if you're a squatter, you're a resident. The owner of the land is technically not a resident. And if my memory serves correct, the law basically speaks to residents' right to defend themselves. And now, what is the burden of proof in that it was a reasonable response? Now, maybe there's an answer in the legislature. Maybe there's an obvious answer. I won't be surprised if there isn't. I'm not a lawyer, so I will let the lawyers speak to it. But this is where we've reached. I think we've taken our culture and personality and soul of our nation for granted. And there's still pockets of the old-time days throughout the country. Don't get me wrong. And on some level, there is perhaps a desire to try to ensure those cultural practices remain. But on some level, as the world gets more sophisticated and as our population grows, whether by birth or by migration or immigrants, things get more complicated. And we can't just continue to run a nation on how we feel that day, which in hindsight might actually be closer to the truth than we would like to admit. If we don't do something to start to formalize certain situations like the PH taxis, but also to cut through some of the nonsense with regards to the laws on how we govern, who's responsible for, and what must be done. Public smoking of marijuana, noise pollution, not just banning effects, but actual laws now to treat with the matter. Not just to treat with the matter that say that it's wrong, but how do you practically treat with the matter? That's why you have PH taxis. That's why you have public smoking of marijuana and the police seemingly don't do anything. That's why at times you might see traffic violations in front of police officers. Laws to govern accountability of our authority services also goes a long way. Is there enough? Is it sufficient? I don't know. I just know that the results are probably not where we would like them to be. That's why we kind of look around, and if we're true to ourselves, those who are old enough, even like me, who's not that old, but can still, as a child, remember what it felt like back then. As a child, I was on my front yard. And as an adult, with the same front yard, I'm not comfortable. I want to be locked inside. Price of progress, I guess. But progress is not supposed to be looking back all the time at the old-time days. lamenting the loss of the old-time ways. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll welcome the good lady, and we'll get into one of the, well, more technical stories that came out this week. Stay tuned. This is Talking Point on WESN. We'll be right back after this.
Three-car raffle organized on behalf of Queens Royal College. First prize is a Royal Ride Ford Ranger. Draw date Saturday, December 20th at the school. Tickets only $100. All proceeds for the further uplifting of the school. Tickets available at islandetickets.com. Sandbag Lotto opposite the Oval. Northern Hardware, Diggle Martin Main Road. West Star Liquor Mart, Moncoco Road. Top Office, Belmont. Hearty Foods Arima. Charlie's Anchor Cafe. Corner Anna Street and Aripita Avenue. Frankie's on the Avenue. Quasi Discount Mart, California. Universal Plumbing, Diggle Martin Main Road. Woodview, Tragrit Road. GAK Electrical and Plumbing opposite Starlight. Western Union, Tunapuna. VML Minimart, St. Lucian Road. Arthur's Minimart, Balandra. Alums Pharmacy, Majuba Crossroad. Madison Bar, Diggle Martin. Auto and Lotto Shop, Long Circular Mall. For more info, call the college at 622-1671 or the hotline at 491-1802. Queens Royal College, Christmas three-car raffle.
It's Christmas time, and with your family you'll spend every evening watching a movie on WESN. The classics that fill your heart with merriment and cheer as we celebrate together the most wonderful time of the year.
This is my island in December.
This Christmas, WESN celebrates with you as the content capital brings the big screen classics. Gather your family and tune in to WESN from December 1st to 31st at 8 p.m. nightly for We Christmas Movie Classics.
Santa's coming to town! Oh my God! Santa here? I know him! I know him!
Only on WESN, Content Capital.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide: Center City Mall, Chaguanas, and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
This is 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region.
Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. I mean, and Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm not to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of this
no.
Let's go to the last part.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God, so we cannot have a stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim, or the man who's being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title, it's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
Great car raffle organized on behalf of Queens Royal College. First prize is a Royal Ride Ford Ranger. Draw date Saturday, December 20th at the school. Tickets only $100. All proceeds for the further uplifting of the school. Tickets available at ICNTT.com. Sandbag Lotto opposite the Oval. Northern Hardware, Diggle Martin Main Road. West Star Liquor Mart, Moncoco Road. Top Office, Belmont. Hearty Foods Arima. Charlie's Anchor Cafe. Corner Anna Street and Aripita Avenue. Frankie's on the Avenue, Quasi Discount Mart, California, Universal Plumbing, Diggle Martin Main Road, Woodview, Tragrit Road, GAK Electrical and Plumbing, opposite Starlight, Western Union, Tunapuna, VML Minimart, St. Lucian Road, Arthur's Minimart, Balandra, Alum's Pharmacy, Majuma Crossroad, Madison Bar, Diggle Martin, Auto and Lotto Shop, Long Circular Mall. For more info, call the college at 622-1671 or the hotline at 491-1802. Queens Royal College, Christmas. Great car raffle.
I'm back here on talking about the WSN joined. She is here this week, folks. The good lady herself. I promise you, she was most disappointed that we were not able to have her last week, and now she's here. Well, with a whole new topic, actually, given the fact that the news cycle waits on no one. Of course, I'm speaking of former Minister of Finance, Karen Shishera. Karen, good morning.
Good morning, Sean. Yes, I'm very happy to be back. And yes, I was disappointed that I couldn't be with you, viewership, to discuss, well, give my opinion on a matter that is in the news cycle. So, yes.
And this is something that you spoke about.
That's right.
I'm not sure if to what degree we spoke about it on Talking Point, but I know you brought it up to me strongly in the past. You wrote an article on it, and now it's almost like if, you know, who could have thought that this might have been a thing? I did know, speaking to some people behind the scenes a while ago, that, and which confirmed, not confirmed, but maybe supported concerns of mine, that this whole situation, something's wrong here, right? I'm not about to say, I know exactly what the problem is. It's just that something's wrong here. It doesn't feel that things are moving smoothly enough. And the problem is, this is not, as you were pointing out off air, this is not some kind of retail good that you could do without. In a lot of cases, this is important medicine.
Exactly. So today what we're going to really be speaking about, and you know, Sean and I do go through a number of topics, yes, that are in the news cycle and determine which one should we bring to the table, so to speak. So it's a matter that I have, for want of a better word, a passion about, because it's dealing with the Fair Trading Commission and its ability to investigate monopolies, and monopolies particularly in the pharmaceutical sector. And really, when we look at that issue, it really is about the pensioners, the persons who are on limited incomes, and the fact that they are, because of monopoly, that they are limited in terms of their choice and in terms of their price. So what I really wanted to speak to today, and we have that in the headlines today, the Speaker of the House sitting at the Public Accounts Committee. I think that is where Public Accounts and PAAC, anyway, the definition. But he spoke, and the headlines from the newspapers were
Public Administration and Appropriations Committee.
Okay, there we go. So that is the committee which he is chairs.
Yes.
And the issue that has come out in the public domain is the Fair Trade Commission director grilled over delays in pharmaceutical probe. And that was a Newsday. And then we also had, apart from that, we had the FTC, Fair Trade Commission, FTC under fire for failing to probe pharmaceutical monopoly claims. That is in the Trinidad Guardian. So it is a matter that is taking up significant time and significant space in the media. So why do I want to bring it up today? Well, I bring it up today because I am glad to see, yes, I am happy to see that Speaker Jagmeet Singh, as chair of this committee, has brought the issue of why has this not been investigated by the Fair Trading Commission. Because what we're looking at is the pharmaceuticals, and as Sean did mention, I did write an article on it regarding, and it was headlined, I think, in the Express as a columnist in July. I didn't realize it was so long ago, but it was July 2025.
I mean, that makes it both better, but all the more startling. We're talking, what, 5 months ago, something like that, like half a year ago, basically. We're in December now.
Yes, but it really speaks to the fact that finally we are getting the traction that is necessary to deal with monopoly of drugs. And let me just say, this is not about bringing down any particular company. No, it is not. It's about the man in the street. It's about the pensioner who has to go and oftentimes, what are the medications that he needs to have? He needs it for diabetes, cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure. Those are the kinds of non-communicable diseases that the older patients who are living longer lives, and NIS will vouch for that, are living longer lives, are the persons who are impacted with a restricted income and having to devote such a large proportion of it to the medication. Now, I know there's...
And I just want to say, this is one of those things where you need to nip this in the bud. You can't allow this problem to get worse because, as we saw at COVID, there's going to be a group of people, they're somewhat elderly, and they have comorbidities, And it's not going to take that much for their health to decline. And once it declines, first of all, you never recover from things like this. You just hold it off. So if it declines from a lack of medication, even if they eventually get a supply and have not yet, unfortunately, passed away, the significant impact to their health, I don't even know if we could quantify the financial value to that, of what it would mean to them.
Yeah, so what had brought me to writing this article in the first instance was because the Pharmacy Board had rejected the claim of the Chamber of Industrial Commerce to give them a 90-day grace period to explore other options following a cease and desist letter that was written because they were illegally, that's the word they used anyhow, selling medication. So after that, I decided that let me look at this in more detail. And unfortunately, yes, I'm going to say that the unfortunate circumstance is that we have, and I'm using the members of the Pharmacy Board as authorities for making that statement. And the statement really speaks to the fact that I think to a large extent we think it's the pharmacies. Yes, maybe the pharmacies do benefit, but the pharmacies are regulated, and regulated in the sense that they have a ceiling upon which they can uplift the price of the medication. And I think when it's prescription drugs, it's 35%, non-prescription over-the-counter is 30%, and CDAP is 25%. So it is regulated. However, where the issue arises is where the distribution and wholesaler. The distribution and wholesaler is unregulated. So that is where, and that's what the Pharmacy Board has said, is the cause of the problem. And it is a monopoly. It's a monopoly that we just simply cannot afford to have. This is not chairs, this is not furniture, this is not cars, this is life and death. And oftentimes the life and death we're talking about is among the pension, among the older population who are simply living on a restricted income to start with. Yes, there's CDAP. Yes, there's CDAP. But we also know that there's also a number of medications that are not available on CDAP, or we have concerns, which I don't think, I think that has been removed because based on on research, what it has said is 95% of the generic drugs, 95% of the prescription drugs are generic, and they do come from India. Because you have the WHO who kind of administers and monitors that whole process in terms of the reliability and I guess what you would consider to be the effectiveness of those drugs. So yes, that is true. But having said that, let us look at why, and this is what I had said in the article, if you don't mind me saying, this is not simply an issue of monopoly or non-essential sector. Access to and affordability of medication is a life and death matter for many who suffer from serious conditions such as cardiovascular disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, and for those who require antibiotics. So in April 2020, the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, the president of the Pharmacy Board, I think his name is Mr. Andrew Rahman, said that it is the distributors and the wholesalers, not the pharmacists, who are responsible for the steep increase in the prices. And the reason I imagine that he may have come out and said that is because there is a video from the Minister of Health, and he seemed to be focusing on the pharmacies. He seemed to be saying that the pharmacies need to, I think he was dealing with hydrochlorine or medication that was needed in respect of the COVID-19, and that people were panic buying, and he said there was no need to panic buy, but he seemed to put the focus on the pharmacies as if the pharmacies were responsible. So I suppose that is why Andrew Rahman, who was the president of the Pharmacy Board, had to come out and say, listen, it's not us. It is the distributors. And who are the distributors? Because as I said already, they're regulated how much they can increase their prices. However, the distributors and the wholesalers do not have any, they're unregulated. And what is very disturbing, what is very concerning, which is where we're coming with the monopoly, is this. In December 2024, the president of the Private Pharmacy Retail Business Sector Association asserted that one company which owned a chain of super pharmacies, quote unquote, was granted special import licenses. 75% of the pharmaceutical market they controlled, and they held 117 of the 167 approved pharmaceuticals registration for those pharmaceuticals, and was allocated $300 million US annually. in foreign exchange for the import of pharmaceuticals, while the smaller pharmaceutical companies were asked to wait for loans of 3 years to get $1 million US. Now, something has to be wrong with that. He says, in addition, that while advertising third schedule or scheduled drugs, which require a drug prescription by a doctor or a dentist, which means that it remains illegal, these drugs are advertised via an app by a super pharmacy. And so they were more clear, they were clearer. They said every indication points to Agostini Limited as a dominant pharmaceutical company in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, why do we say that? In 2010, Agostini Limited, which is 100% owned by the Mute family, acquired Smith Robertson, rebranded Aventa in 2025. Aventa is the largest pharmaceutical distribution company in Trinidad and Tobago. In 2021, Agostini added to his portfolio of pharmaceutical distribution companies, Oscar Francois Limited and Intersol Limited. And also, Agostino entered into a joint ownership agreement with Han Arnold Trinidad Limited. And in 2024, Agostini Limited chairman Christian Mute announced Agostini's acquisition of whole traders under the Aventa name. Aventa also operates as a pharmaceutical wholesaler, working with global firms, Roche, Bayer, Pfizer, and GlaxoSmithKline. That's how big they are. And when we talk about, even in the CDAP program, they now have made a distributor of generic drugs. Now, why is that a problem? Well, that's why you have a Fair Trading Commission. That is where Jagdeep Singh, Speaker Jagdeep Singh, Chair Jagdeep Singh comes into being. Because why hasn't a Fair Trading Commission in Trinidad and Tobago taken any action, investigative powers, to determine whether the monopolies that these companies have is anti-monopolistic? Because having a monopoly in and of itself is not wrong. They say monopoly is when you have 40% of the market share in a particular, in this case, a pharmaceutical. But where it becomes a problem is where you have evidence that it is anti-monopolistic, meaning that it is, let me look at the definition that is given by the Fair Trading Commission. And what the minister has said, sorry, I keep calling him a minister, but the speaker, he talked and he spoke very grilled them. That's one of the headlines. They said that, yes, we have it up. A Fair Trade Commissioner director grilled over the lazy pharmaceutical probe. I mean, yes,
I just want to add, there was a report December last year that they were going to look into this. So part of the grilling is, it's not that they ignored it, but rather how they conducted themselves, I think is in a way even worse. And the speaker grilling them, I was kind of taken aback. I don't think I ever saw the chairman of a committee have such pointed questions at a subject that was just so blatantly damning. I can't think of a devil's advocate explanation to say, well, maybe it was because of this. You know, sometimes I do that, a lot of times I do that, much to everyone else's annoyance, right? How you can say that, how you can say that. But no, in this case, I'm like, I don't know. How does an investigative body, you know, tell the complainer, oh yeah, you have to get us the evidence from these private entities?
Yes, he really was very upset. And I have to say that in the article that I wrote, which you can find if you look, Drug Sector, the Danger of a Monopoly, which I think was published in July 2025 in the Express as a column, he said he pressed Narayan Singh. Reverend Narayan Singh is the CEO of Fair Trading Commission. And he described the lethargy of failing to use like extensive statutory powers to investigate, because they do have statutory powers. They're very, if you look at the Fair Trading Act, Section 6, 7, 8, he mentioned them. And remember, Jacques was saying, is an attorney at law. Mm-hmm. Yes, I did teach him.
You did teach him?
Yes, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
No, meaning that, oh God, I can't get away, but anyhow. And so also Narayan Singh. So anyhow.
Oh God, so you've taught both sides of this issue.
There you go. But in all joking aside, I think he said it was a matter of the highest national importance. He talked about monopolistic behavior in supply and retail distribution of pharmaceuticals. What, according to the report, he alternated between irritation and incredulity as he questioned why the Fair Trade Commission, despite receiving letters and documentation dating back to September 2024, had not initiated a formal investigation using its powers under the Fair Trading Act. And yes, the Fair Trading Act does not require an individual to bring the matter to the Fair Trading to initiate. It is very clear, he's absolutely clear about that. It can on its own initiative act, and there's no question that when the pharmaceutical industry, that is an area in which we need to have some sort of investigation and some sort of action taken, because, as he said, anti-competitive behavior in the marketplace is among the highest interest concerns needing protection. So let me just say, it's not that you have more than 40%. That brings you to being a monopoly. It is what your monopoly behavior encourages. What it does, it leaves others out of the market. So it leaves the pharmacies out of the market. They've had, according to the data, they've had several small pharmacies closed down because they simply cannot compete. Now, when you have no competition, that is not good. That is not good, because what you're saying, they control the price. They control the price. And when you're talking about your medication, when you talk about life and death, because it is life and death.
And here's the thing with economics. In a lot of ways, it is not wrong to increase the price as long as the consumer is willing to pay. But
can pay.
That is the theory, right? So, and then in certain cases, it's almost like if you go against that at your own peril, because you operate at levels that is not necessarily sustainable, or it gets you problems. So the air bridge is a situation where we have the price lower, because of that demand is higher, and it's kind of making operations a bit wonky, right? The price really should be higher, but understandably, we don't want to price people out of the air bridge, because it's not as though everybody's rich and everybody traveling between Trinidad and Tobago, you know, could afford $1,000 tickets. It's a whole different ball game when you speak about pharmaceuticals now, when you start to apply that. Because it's true, if I had alcohol, I know this is going to be a controversial point to a lot of people, but the point is, why do you tax cigarettes and alcohol? Well, they're luxury goods. And however the price goes up, once people are willing to buy it, you know, we could kind of get away with a tax or two. But with regards to that economic theory of, well, let's just keep raising the price, required life-saving pharmaceuticals, it's not a luxury, it's a necessity. There's no, oh, well, it's too expensive, I'll just go without, like if it's tomatoes. You know, when tomatoes got, at one point, they were just stuck on the shelves, no one was going to buy them. Not with your heart medication or your diabetes medication. You're forced to buy it. You're a prisoner in the moment. And now this is, again, I said it, we can't allow this. And maybe it wasn't that bad, but even the appearance, the veneer, the beginnings, right, of maybe something bad might happen is something that you have to take seriously, and the FTC not investigating. That's the whole point. If they investigated and legitimately found nothing, fine. But it seems like they didn't.
And that is what I think Chair Jagdev Singh was really upset about, and understandably so. Because if you look at the functions of the Fair Trading Commission, the Fair Trading Act 2006, Section 5, talks about the functions of the Commission. And it has to carry out investigations. Look what it says, carry out, subject to Section 9, on its own initiative or at the request of any interested person, such investigations in relation to the conduct of business as will enable it to determine whether any enterprise is engaged in business practices in contravention of this Act. So investigate on its own initiative or at the request of any person adversely affected and take such action as is considered necessary with respect to the abuse of monopoly power by any enterprise. So there's no question that the Fair Trade Commission has the power to on its own initiative to investigate issues of monopolies. Now, when we look at that, look at Jamaica. And I look at Jamaica because, you know, oftentimes it really is, I don't know, it really speaks to how we in Trinidad and Tobago are treating with issues of critical importance. And you know what the Jagdev Singh has said. He has talked about inertia. He has talked about delays. He's talked about underfunding. These are the classic ways in which an organization may not say that it will not do X, Y, and Z, which it has the statutory powers to do. But if it's underfunded, if its authority to investigate is bogged down by delays upon delays, then what are you effectively doing? You talk about bureaucratic inertia, which is what I spoke about. So when we look at the Fair Trading Act, and we look at the Fair Trading Commission in Jamaica, I looked at it, and this is what they talked about: insulin. And guess who they were talking about? Massey and Aventa. Yes, Massey and Aventa in Jamaica. This is what they said. They say the sale of Massey Distribution Jamaica Limited to Ocado, which is Aventa, continues to remain on pause as the Fair Trade Commission seeks to prevent a monopoly on the distribution of insulin products in Venezuela. The Fair Trade Commission, FTC, provided an update in the continued review of the acquisition. Massey Holdings Limited, the parent company, announced in February that it was selling 100% of the Jamaican subsidiary to Ocado, which is so many different names. Anyway, to a 50-50 joint enterprise between Trinidad-based Agostini Limited and Barbados-based Corded Enterprise Limited. But this is what they said. They said, although Ocado doesn't have an existing presence in the Jamaican market, Agostini does have a presence in the pharmaceutical space in its subsidiary Aventa Jamaica Limited, formerly Health Brands Limited. See how many names have changed, but it's really Aventa. On an initial phase 1 review, the FCC identified significant concentration of insulin distribution by both companies. Insulin is used mainly in the treatment of diabetes type 1. And what they said, they identified significant competition concerns in the distribution of insulin products in Jamaica. They said currently there are 3 brands available in Jamaica, and all are distributed by either Massey or Aventa. And do you know what they did? Yes, they did something about it. Why can't the Trinidad and Tobago Fair Trade Commission? This is what Jack Singh asks. Why the delays? Why the inertia? Why the excuses upon excuses? Because look at what they did. They said in May 27, 2025, the Fair Trade Commission formally notified the parties and began negotiations to ensure the acquisition does not compromise the accessibility or affordability of insulin. So what did they do? They said there are 35 insulin-related products, which I won't mention, but the point is, in order for this transaction to receive a non-objection letter by the FTC, an insulin brand must be distributed by an independent distribution company to preserve competition in the insulin market. Once the revised distribution structure safeguards competition, the Fair Trading Commission will issue a non-objection letter subject to additional safeguards to preserve competition in the market. And they say once a distributor is identified and a formal agreement or commitment is submitted, the FTC will conduct due diligence to confirm that the new arrangement addresses competition concerns. For example, the new distributor must not be affiliated with any company involved in the acquisition of the insulin. So what it really speaks to is why is Jamaica, where you have Aventa is operating in Jamaica, and yet the Fair Trading Commission, the legislation is called the Fair Competition Act, is very similar to our own, and they have taken action by including in the monopoly, so to speak, of the insulin, another competitor who is not in any way associated or identified or affiliated with any of the companies that are already established in Jamaica. And insulin, just like diabetes, just like cardiovascular disease, these are diseases that require us as a country to be very concerned that, as Jagdeep Singh, I think Speaker Jagdeep Singh could not have said it better, to be very honest. He really showed how incredulous, how level of disbelief that the Fair Trade Commission, who has the powers to investigate, they have extensive, robust powers of investigation. So this idea that they have to wait until you bring information to them. Once there is indication, someone writes a letter, and they're living in Trinidad, they must know. You go to the supermarkets, you go to the pharmacies, who controls the distribution and wholesale? It is the distribution and wholesale which is unregulated, not the pharmacy. The pharmacies are regulated. They can only uplift their prices by, as I said, by 35%, 30%, and 25%. But it's the distribution and wholesaler who is unregulated in the market. And they have no question about it. They have a monopoly. Now, monopoly in of itself, you will say, is not a bad thing, but it is a bad thing, really, because really it does affect your freedom of choice. And if you can only get particular medication, which you need, this is not something like headache tablet, a Panadol, which I've also used as an example of monopoly. It's not like a Panadol. Sorry to give the name of a brand name, but I'm not advertising any medication. The point is that if you are going for life-saving medication that you must take, not a question you want to take it, you must take it. You must take it. And you are limited by your choice and your price because they control the market. Something is wrong with that. Something is wrong with that. And in fact, the Fair Trading Act does give you a definition of what is anti-competitive behavior. So as I already said, having a monopoly by itself does not mean that you are indulging anti-monopolistic behavior. But when you are, this is what they have said in terms of what they can do. They can investigate, and if at the end of the investigation they recommend some corrective measures to be taken and they are not taken, they can go to the High Court. And they will go to the High Court, and the court can then, and this is from their website, so I am taking it from their website, TTFTC website, and the court prohibit the offending conduct, prohibit an agreement from being made or carried out, order that an agreement be modified or terminated, prohibit any specific conditions being attached to transactions, prohibit the acquisition of another company or impose appropriate conditions, and impose fines up to 10% of the annual turnover. So there is power of the TTFC, and they can initiate investigation, and they have very robust investigative powers. They can go in there with a warrant, in some instances with a warrant, and they can get what you would call, not really confidential information regarding the business of the monopoly. So that Jagdeep Singh, as I said, Speaker Jagdeep Singh, as well positioned and well, I was really pleased, for want of a better word, to really see that he took such a strong and robust position regarding the lack of the delays on the part of the FTC.
I might be a prisoner in the moment, but it almost seemed as though he showed far more annoyance and far more, I don't want to say disgust, but I mean, you've seen some of the things that has happened in Parliament recently, and my boy was like, nah, I'm going to be even keel, right? I'm going to be the pillar of, let's stay calm down, everybody. But he was the one that apparently was the most fiery in this situation. I do believe at the very least Dr. Atz was also somewhat vocal, at least to some extent. But I only looked at a little bit of the speaker's, the chairman's remarks. And for him to be like, nah, this is not the time for me to be the voice of reason and moderation. Now the time for me to get to the root of the issue. I have to admit too, I also was very pleased. I do find that Mr. Singh, the chairman, the speaker, does a reasonably good job in his duties. And the thing is, there are wider implications to this. It's just that with pharmaceuticals, this is one of those things where the responsibility of the situation, it's so heavy, right? But you have to ask the question. Now, well, first of all, I do find it interesting when you brought up the fact that the Fair Trading Commission has the ability to act on its own initiative. And I would argue, think about it, outside of cabinet, and even within cabinet, so many ministers don't seem to practice initiative at times. So much less for these commissions and these offices and these state entities, unless they have to do a thing. Well, it's almost like if they don't practice the initiative, and then on top of that now we have to ask the wider question of, what else is the FTC not doing?
Exactly, and coming back to your point about Jagdeep Singh, I really was pleased to see the extent to which he mirrored what the man in the street must feel about the anti-monopolistic behavior. This is what he's against. He says that he challenged Narayan Singh, which is Bevan Narayan Singh, the CEO, why instead of invoking Section 8, which allows the Commission to compel documents from business enterprises, the FTC placed responsibility on the private association to obtain sensitive corporate records from entities. Why would they do that? Suspected of wrongdoing. Why would they do that? He asks, how are they possibly going to requisition documents privately held by private entities allegedly engaged in anti-competitive monopolistic behavior? You have the power to obtain those documents by relatively simple means. So what could he say? You know what he said? I think after he pressed him, he said underfunding. Underfunding was what? I mean,
that's what we said with the DPP, right?
That is true.
And
that is true, you know. Let us not, you know,
there's some truth to it.
There's much truth to it. There's much truth to it. So what I will say in conclusion that I am pleased that when I spoke about the dangers of the drug sector, pharmaceutical sector, and it's the man in the street. It's the man in the street. This is the person who is living on a limited income, that they now are having to purchase their medication, which is life-saving, literally life-saving, based on monopoly. Monopoly cannot be good in this country where you're dealing with the pharmaceutical sector. Why is it that Jamaica is capable of taking action against Aventa, which seems to be the main player in the pharmaceutical industry, as my article does go on to say? So it's not that I have said it, they have said it. Christian Muti has said. I mean, I think they're proud, actually, that they were controlling the monopoly. But you see, with the monopoly comes a cost, and the cost is to the man in the street. And I think we have to be, we as the consumer, the ultimate consumer, we limit the power that we do have. And we have to start, I believe, to asking the hard questions. Asking the question that Jagdeep Singh, I'm so proud of him, actually. There may be other areas which I would not, I would refer from, what is the word? I would not give an opinion. Yes, I would not give an opinion. But when it came to this, I was so pleased to see the energy, the clear, so it seemed to me anyhow, that he really was shocked at that the Fair Trading Commission had the power to investigate and did not do that. Why have they not done that?
All right, there's a bit more to say on the wider implications, but we'll go with Digger Martin on the line. Good morning, caller, you on here?
Good morning, Sean, and a very, very good morning to the former Minister of Finance.
Good morning.
I am one of the men in the street, and I have a history of how the monopoly has affected me as a user of insulin.
Okay.
And there's no way, no place other than Smith Robinson, the name has changed, that I could have gotten this. And I want people to understand the seriousness of it, because I was in the middle of it and I had to back away from making complaints. If people are aware, insulin, you have to have a small needle, they call a pen tip needle, which you use to dispense your quantity you have to use. The doctor recommend it, and you stick yourself. 5 years ago, I had an issue with the pen tip needle. It stuck in my stomach. I went to that company 5 or 6 times to say, look, it is a problem. They treated me like the S word. I came back home, I said, because I can't not take my insulin. I had to bear that psychological thing. Every time I stick myself to pull out, look to make sure the needle doesn't stay in my stomach. I came back home, I said, no, I have more sense than that. I have tertiary education, have been in the private sector. I could get something done with it. I took it upon myself to write the manufacturer of the needles, a UK company, 3 o'clock in the night. 5 o'clock, I got a response. They responded to me and said, look, we will look at it. Because the local representation didn't want to do that. 3 months after, they didn't respond. So I shoot out another letter. They apologized for not looking at it. 2 weeks after they came back, they said, sir, your problem is justified. We will have to do changes based on your complaint, because nobody has brought this up to you. And they redesigned the needle. I went back to the company and said, you all didn't do that because I am a kind of person, way down in the hierarchy of customers. I'm not a wholesaler, but because I was using this for a while, I was given a prescription to go to them because I was like a wholesaler using it, which is an individual user. So I used to put in my order and go and pick it up. They never did anything. I thought this was so serious. I went to an MP who was a former planning minister. I said, look what is happening here. Can you raise this in Parliament? And I will tell you, I have every communication with the English company and with that MP. Nobody did nothing. No. I couldn't raise that anywhere again. Because if these people decided not to sell meeting because I'm a troublemaker, it would have jeopardized me, and I will put a question mark my survival. So I back off and I leave it. And I'm saying no more about it. This is how monopoly can affect a small potato like me. And to get back to the Fair Trade Commission, look at the previous board. I mean to say, a lot of supposedly competent people, a lot of them is, one is PhD, one was on not the deposit insurance, the one for T&T Public Utility, Ms. Calendar. Look at Bevan Nansing. Qualification, you have to ask, if they are so qualified, why did they not move? Why did they not try to help an average small potato citizen like me? Because it's costing me a fortune. I'm using a specialist in chilling. I can't get nowhere else again.
Yes.
I gone this morning because I'm very passionate. And thanks for addressing it like that, Karen. Because there are a lot of people we need more like you to represent small potatoes. But even though my mouth big and I could write a little bit and get some answers, sometimes you have to back off because they could put the big hammer you. I go on. Have a nice morning.
Yes, and you know what I wanted to say to that is that you couldn't get a better example of why monopolies are not good. You know, even though I know you've had callers before because we've spoken about what topic would be our topic that would, you know, be of interest to the viewership. You did say that, you know, pharmacies are benefiting. Pharmacies may benefit, but, you know, listen, we have a capitalist system. We have a system where people are allowed to, and that there are checks and balances in the legislation to limit the extent to which persons can take advantage, so to speak, of the consumer. So we have consumer protection laws. But what it really speaks to, what the gentleman says, it's not just about competition. It's not just about access. It's just about, not just about affordability. He had to back off. And I have to back off too, because I did think about, should I come and speak about this? But, you know, I did think about, should I come out and speak about this? But, you know, if you don't speak about it, if you don't say something about it, nothing will change. And that is why I think that Sean, the Juggler thing has really done us proud in speaking out about it. And the fact that the newspapers have continued to cover it and make it the issue that it is, because it is not right. His issue with the insulin, you can multiply that 10, 20 times over and over again. The people who you see going to the pharmacies having to buy this, and you know, just having to purchase something that they know is absolute. It's not a question they want to, you know. They have to. And when they have to, and you are told, well, you could only buy it from X because they are the wholesaler and distributor, then what choice do you have? And then when they increase the price, what choice do you have? What choice do you have?
So the thing is, okay, vertical integration gets efficiency, so forth. One of the things that we're not saying, and I don't think anyone has said, we're seeing efficiencies means low prices passed on to the consumer. More importantly, we also have to consider, even if the business entity is not trying to exploit the consumer, which, to be honest, over time, because that could be the unless it's like a family-owned thing, and yes, I guess to some extent it might be, but over time, the business practices, there will be that temptation or that pressure. You'll get a new CEO who thinks he knows better or whatever, right? But even if there's no consumer exploitation, there are risks with having a monopoly. There are significant risks to supply chain and to society. And I'll get to that, but we do have San Fernando, so we'll take San Fernando first. Good morning, caller, on the air.
Good morning, Sean.
Morning.
Morning, Karen.
Morning.
Let me get my shield because I might have to duck from Karen this morning.
Oh my God.
No, let me put it out there. I am a shareholder, right? So let me put that out there first. So these companies have to look at shareholder value, right? I say that blatantly. Now, within the Fair Trade Act, Karen, under Part 3, where they talk about mergers and monopolies and anti-competitive behavior, the information that is there, according to what the Act says, are you saying that the Commission is involved in dereliction of duty? Because there is enough information there, powers there, for the Commission to do what you are asking him. So then, I want you to go a little further. Is it a fact? Are you saying that this is a dereliction of duty by the Commission? Because if you read part 3, where you talk about mergers, and if you read just where you talk about when subsection 7, 8, and 9, and 10 in the Act, is it that the dereliction, or is it that the Commission has looked at this and decided that what is happening with those companies is not anti-competitive? I want your view on that.
I don't think that they could conclude that. I don't think that is so. In fact, I don't want to call the name of the firm, but there's a very well-respected commercial law firm that at the height of the COVID-19, when they had the COVID-19 and the prices of, I think, cleaning hand sanitizers, masks, and so on, went through the roof, they did acknowledge that was part of the anti-competitive behavior because there's nobody to compete with. So therefore, if you have no one to compete with, it allows you to take advantage of that situation and increase your prices. What are you going to do? If you have to have it, you have to have it. And I mean, the COVID-19 is a good example because I don't know if you could remember, but it really filled people with terror. I mean, every day, the Minister of Health would publish, and I thank him for that, let us know how many persons that died with comorbidities. What do comorbidities mean? You know what comorbidities mean? At least as I understand, it's old people who have cardiovascular diseases, who have diabetes. Those are the ones who are dying from COVID-19. Because 9 out of 10 times, he said, the person who died with comorbidities. So that even strengthened the position of why you need to have the drug. So I don't have to say there's a dereliction of duty. I think the facts speak for themselves. There's something in local res ipsa loquitur. Facts speak for themselves. If there is clearly a monopoly, that Smith Robertson is owned by a vendor, Oscar Francois is owned by a vendor, all of these major pharmaceutical companies are owned by a vendor, and they have not hidden that. They have come out. I haven't gone and looked at confidential data. I have gone and looked at the newspaper where they have come out and said that they have acquired, and not only do they have monopoly over drugs that are brought in the country, but Glasgow, Klein, all these major global pharmaceutical giants, they also have some sort of arrangement with them. So I would say, facts speak for themselves. It is clear there's a bureaucratic inertia. There's a lack of and this is what Jack Dawson basically said. Why the delays? I mean, yes, I do agree with him. Why it is that Jamaica dealing with the same issues with Aventa, same Aventa, they are able to come to a decision. I imagine a non-objection letter has some legal implications that means that we're not going to go further with the matter, but I haven't looked it up. But they have come out and been very public about it. They have said, okay, insulin is important. Insulin is something that persons don't want, they need it. And therefore we cannot have a situation where there's only one entity providing that insulin. So we have got to bring in another distributor. We've got to bring in another entity that is not affiliated with any of these companies. So why can't we do that in Trinidad? Why? So to answer your question, unfortunately, in Mr. San Fernando, unfortunately, I have been in politics, yes. And unfortunately, because I have been in politics, and I have been as the Ministry of Finance, nothing surprises me. Nothing surprises me. And yes, all I will say in response to that, the facts speak for themselves. Why haven't they taken initiative? Why haven't they investigated the matter? And I think that the Speaker, as chair of that committee, has said it very well. I could not say it any better. And I think, as I said, dereliction of duty is very harsh words to use. I don't want anybody suing me for defamation, which is what I can follow from that. But what I can see is that the fact that nothing has been done, the fact that there is evidence, and commercial, let me just say too, one of the top commercial law firms has written about it. They wrote about it, and they talked about the danger of the anti-monopolistic behavior. I won't call the name of the law firm. So there's no question that it is an issue. Why hasn't the Fair Trade Commission? What's the point of having a commission then? What's the point? What is the point?
And I think the key point is, we can't even say maybe the situation is benign, because based on the testimony, there wasn't an investigation. And that was my point earlier, in the sense of, have the investigation to clear it. That's fine. If the evidence suggests that there isn't anti-competitive behavior, that's fine. But the executive director was not able to say that, I believe, at the session. He was not able to defend his position, right, to the satisfaction of Chairman Singh. He was not able to defend why they didn't have an investigation. Now, the executive director is trying to say, well, certain things were in place and da-da-da-da-da. But at the end of the day, based on what Karen has said, and I believe I'm somewhat assuming based on how the chairman was conducting the session, you know, the authorities of the FTC, seemingly it's almost like if the executive director is trying to say, well, we don't really have that authority, you know, or we don't have the board in place. So I think there was a comment where he said, I want to get this comment because it kind of is incredulous to me. We've never launched an investigation of this nature before. And that goes to a point that I started yesterday. Not necessarily on this topic, right? But we'll take a quick break. When we come back, I'll say what I mean with regards to that point. Stay tuned.
A 3-car raffle organized on behalf of Queen's Royal College. You have a chance of winning a luxurious royal ride, Ford Ranger. Draw date Saturday, December 20th at the school. Tickets only $100. All proceeds for the further uplifting of the school. Tickets available at ICNTT.com. Lewis Appliances, corner Trafford Road and Edward Street. Caribbean Jewelers, Twin City Mall. Mandarin Mini Mart St. Anne's. A. Moses and Sons, 181 Trafford Road. Quaysay Supermarket, Calcutta Road number 2. Strive Restaurant and Bar, Mukarapa Road. New Car and Auto Shop, West Mall. First Priority Music, Gulf City Mall. SNSR Food Center, Princesstown. Quaysay Best Price, St. Mary's Junction. Roaming's Hardware, Marava. Cascade Minimart. Kelly Supermarket, Digger Mountain Main Road. The Unit Trust Agency in West Mall. For more info, call the college at 622-1671 or the hotline at 491-1802. Queen's Royal College Christmas 3-car raffle.
It's Christmas time, and with your family you'll spend every evening watching a movie on WESN. The classics that fill your heart with merriment and cheer as we celebrate together the most wonderful time of the year.
This is my island in December.
This Christmas, WESN celebrates with you as the content capital brings the big screen classics.
Yes!
Gather your family and tune in to WESN from December 1st to 31st at 8 p.m. nightly for We Christmas Movie Classics.
Santa's coming to town! Oh
my God! Santa here? I know him. I know him.
Only on WESN, Content Capital.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios. But they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today. SM Group International Limited, your solutions partner for the latest innovations, brands, and competent staff to meet your needs. We provide products and services in the following divisions: executive services, event rental and services, power and heavy equipment, construction and property management, food and beverage, aggregate and sales and distribution. Check out more on our products and services at www.smgrouptt.com. Contact us at 221-7445 or email at info@smgrouptt.com. We are SM Group International, your solutions partner.
I'm back here on talking about the WSND Content Capital, and I was about to make the point. I have a couple points to make, one from before the caller, one from after the caller. One of the things that I found incredulous was when the executive director said, we've never launched an investigation of this nature before. Now, I might be taking that out of context because the statement before, there was trepidation about acting without a board. So I don't know what the requirements of the FTC and its board, if that's the board he was talking about, are and how they conduct investigations, but I still don't like that statement. We have never launched an investigation of this nature before. It's almost like if he's afraid of it. Because I get it, you know, this could be a precedent-setting situation. But as I mentioned before, and ironically, without necessarily the intention of making a connection, but as I started off the show at the top this morning, we're independent, aren't we? We're supposed to be able to handle our business. Why is it that it seems as though in too many areas, somebody wants a big brother to hold their hand when they're doing something complicated or controversial? But yet, though, as an independent nation, oftentimes these things are necessary. We can't run from them. We can't hide from them, right? Part of the thing of the FTC, it's not about the FTC to condemn these drug companies, right? It's not that they have to find them guilty. It's for them to investigate. Let the chips fall where they may. But oh my gosh, because here's the thing about monopolies that I wanted to get to before the caller, and why I think at least there's part of the explanation, right? Although I would argue it's still gone too far. This is the risk with monopolies. Even if you have the most benign monopolies that don't want to exploit the population. Here's the issue. Let's just say they have the best intentions. And what if they make a bad business decision, a bad strategic decision? And especially if you're talking about an unnecessary good that is a monopoly, right? But even then, if it's a large corporation, think about the amount of employees you have, and they make a bad business decision, a benign one, a well-intentioned one, but one that causes them to suffer losses now, one that causes issues with their supply chain management. What does that mean for the consumer? When a bad business decision on a monopoly now could cause issues with the supply of critical goods, right? But also, think about this term that a lot of people dislike, too big to fail. Well, when you have monopolistic control over something like pharmaceuticals in a country, for all intents and purposes, you are now too big to fail. Then there's the fact that as a major employer, you are potentially too big to fail. Absolutely. And what happened with the 2008 financial situation, right? It was caused because it's not always just, oh, well, we made a mistake, oops. Sometimes you intentionally do some questionable business decisions and you end up in some hot water, and then you run to the government and say, oh, well, you know, we're too big to fail, bail us out. Now, some might view that that's what happened with a certain financial institution, right?
No, because I'm glad you did mention that, because it really speaks, and actually, of course, let me just say this very quickly.
I didn't necessarily want to open a can of worms, but if you want to go there, we can go there.
I'm glad you did it, but let me just say this before I do speak to that. I see that in today's Express, and I didn't read today's Express, the Prime Minister vows to reduce prices for citizens, and she was dealing with the pharmaceutical business in particular. So when Mr. Sanfano asked me about dereliction of duty, yes, I'm sorry to say this is true. I'm sorry to say that why haven't they been investigated? Why hasn't the Minister of Trade taken it upon herself that there was sufficient there that to investigate? And why it ties in with your comment, delay, Commission of Inquiry into CL Financial, how many years? How many years? $100 million spent, according to what had was said. How long ago was that undertaken? 2010? 15 years later, and to date, you have the Commission of Inquiry. Patrick Manning has died. I am still there as the former Minister of Finance, and why hasn't that been done? So you have to understand the importance of delay. Delay effectively means that you effectively kill a matter, because yes, you do. You see, so and so that it is just curious that you brought up the CL Financial, only because I have been asking time, and I'll ask it again. Please, Prime Minister, please, you have the Commission of Inquiry. The President has the Commission of Inquiry. That is what has been said. Dr. Rowley has said that a few years back, and yet it has not been released. I'm asking you please to do that, because it's the same issue here. When you talk about Retail Commission and the, Fair Trading Commission, why are they being under-resourced? If that's one of the things that Bevan Aransing may have said, if I can quote him correctly, but also the delay, why the inertia, and it is true. It's political reasons for that. It is true. It is true. It is true. I mean, she's, you know, but it goes both ways, huh? Yes. It goes both ways. So what is true, that the dereliction of duty may have not been as, let us say, as unintentional as one would like to think, because why would the Minister of Trade not investigate a vendor? Why? Why wouldn't the Fair Trading Commission take upon itself to carry out its own investigation? Why does it need there to be a change of government, a change of politics, a change of political party, for the chair and the Speaker of the House to bring this matter to the committee? Why has it to reach to that point? Because now it's all over the front page of the Express. It's all over the front page of the Newsday. It's all in the daily newspaper. I had written, as I said, in July 2025, and I have to thank the Express, yes, because I do think that they do. I mean, I think writing that article and naming names was obviously not, you know, commercially, not commercially safe for them to do that, and I do respect them for doing that. I respect the Express, I have to say, for doing what they did at that point in time. And today, now we're hearing from the Prime Minister, we are hearing a vendor is being called out. It is a vendor. And why isn't the Fair Trade coming? Why was the Minister of Trade? Why wasn't the Minister of Trade investigating the matter? Why was the Minister of Trade being advised by the CEO? I am sure, you know, I'm pretty confident I'm pretty confident that the CEO, Bevan Narangthi, must have brought that to her attention because they were getting letters. That is what the chair said, that they were getting letters. Why weren't you investigating it? You know?
And I'd like to point out, this might be somewhat of a pattern of behavior in certain entities that have these types of responsibilities, these checks and balances, right? No one wants to rock the boat. And on a tangential example or a similar situation, I suspect, I don't have proof, but I suspect one of the issues why the then Minister of Finance relationship with the new Auditor General devolved so quickly was because, just as my speculation from the outside looking in, right? She didn't play ball like how her predecessor played ball, like how everybody else potentially played ball, potentially, right? Speculation, right? Because how is it that the Minister of Finance had these expectations of someone now into the job? Like, you don't do your job? This is your job. You're not supposed to question me. You're supposed to just do what I tell you to do, rubber stamp it, and we move on, right? To borrow, so let me not make that reference. No one will get that reference if they don't see clip. It's a joke Morgan Freeman made with Denzel Washington, right?
Okay.
So
but
we'll
have to look better.
Yeah, that's not very specific. So now when we look at this situation, right? I could see no one wants to rock the boat in this society. Why? If I rock the boat, I could lose my job. If I'm a CPEP and URP worker and I don't vote for my party, I could have lost my job. Now, if I'm a WASA worker, I do have to wonder, could I lose my job? But more importantly, and the Prime Minister, at the end of the day, if you don't like it, then you need to complain to your party because they did not operate with transparency to at least allow us the capacity to give them the benefit of the doubt.
I just want to say the reason why I feel so strongly about it is because it's a small man. That is the one that's affected, you know.
But I just want to say the Prime Minister is right to connect the previous administration to this. You can't but ask the question. You have to ask the question. You cannot ignore that possibility because how does this situation allow to remain, right, without anyone challenging it? And I would say the maritime border, porous borders is a similar example of that. How is it allowed to remain there? We have San Fernando. I believe San Fernando's back. Caller, good morning.
Yes, Sean, and Karen, I'm back.
Yes.
Let me first say this, Sean.
Yeah.
I have repeatedly, I'm going to use strong language, I have repeatedly warned you about having water on that desk on a Wednesday for Karen, and you have not seen that bottle sitting alongside Karen on a Wednesday.
Well,
please get that
water on the desk.
Technically?
Yes.
Okay.
There's water
What does he mean though? What does he mean though?
I should have water in
No, he's using a metaphor.
No.
No, metaphor.
Oh, the coffin. Yes, listen. Okay. No, I won't show. Look, I got water. I got water.
I was looking to show them it's a numerous occasion, so that is one thing. Now let me say this. Let me ask you this, Karen. As we're looking at monopolies and mergers and in the pharmaceutical sector, but it seems to be a pattern developing within the Trinidad and Tobago space where across other sectors we're seeing similar behavior. And not only similar behavior across these sectors, but that the players seem to be the same.
There you go.
How dangerous? And this is my citizen hat. This is my citizen hat on here. How dangerous is that to the economy as a whole, to young entrepreneurs, people who have a little money and decide I want to take a risk and go into business. I think that is also where we need to focus the lens as well, because that behavior is occurring across in other sectors by seemingly the same players. You want to comment on that, Karen? Thank you.
Oh dear. Well, what I will say is that you're spot on. You really are spot on, and it's and the fact of the matter is the reason why I feel so very strongly. I can tell you, I feel very strongly about it because I understand that bringing this topic and calling names is a dangerous thing to do. When I say dangerous, I don't mean physically dangerous. I mean, commercially dangerous. But, the reality is, yes, the reality is that the same players are dominating other sectors. And I don't want to, on this occasion, to identify the other sector. But let us just say, because perhaps it would be too direct, but what you have said is true. What you have said is true. You see, when you have monopolies are even more dangerous in a small society like ours because they have interlocking directors. When you have monopolies, the same persons who sit on this board, sit on that board, sit on that board. So when they make decisions, they're making decisions that affect across the board, whatever the sector may be. And therefore, they control the sector. He who plays the piper plays the tune. And you have to understand the economic power that you give to them can be a stranglehold. And one day when you wake up and you realize that your employment opportunities are affected by them because they sit on every single board. They sit on every single board and they can blacklist you. We don't understand how dangerous, for want of a better word, that having monopolies are for a small country like Trinidad and Tobago. They control the politicians. They control potentially politicians, let me just put it that way.
I'll have to ask you to interrupt you there. We do have Freeport on the line waiting. Freeport, good morning. You on there?
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
I'm calling because I have a problem for the Joint Commission program to talk about.
Go ahead.
Concerning monopolies.
Mm-hmm.
I was on a cancer treatment drug a few years ago, and the agent sold it. Eventually, it went up from $900 to $1,400, and if you bought it outside in the pharmacy, it was $1,900. Now, can you tell me how can they justify a desperate person having to pay that kind of money if the health system, for some reason, can't provide it at that particular month? And this is a cost incurred every month by the patient. I called the pharmacy board because I was upset, and they told me they were exercising their 35% markup. So you mark up a drug $400 for a desperate person. If you can buy it, fine. What happens if you can't buy it? For that month, you are out of a drug, and there are more people out of pocket than people who can afford it, because if they could afford it, they would go to their private doctors. I am so glad that you brought up this topic because I was incensed. I stopped taking the drug a few years ago, but I'm still advocating for people who cannot buy a drug as important not only to your health, but to your life. So thank you very much, and I hope you all continue the good work.
Caller, but I just need to ask, caller, are you there? Caller?
She's gone.
All right, okay, I won't pry. Just the fact that she said that she stopped taking the medication.
She must probably taken something else.
I'm hoping, caller, that yes, there was an alternative path for you. But regardless, that's why you said it yourself. What about those, I guess, who don't have an alternative,
and
right? Who don't have any options?
She didn't only talk about affordability, she talked about accessibility.
Yes.
And that is true. I know that it is true, and I'm glad to hear that the callers appreciate what we are doing, because yes, we're going out on a limb, and yes, we feel strongly about it, just as how Prime Minister has stated. I spoke eloquently on the matter, just as how Jagdeep Singh has spoken with incredulity. Anyway, whatever the word is, incredulous, right? I mean, all joking aside. But, just to hear them speak about it, it is so very, very wrong. It is so very wrong. And yes, it is at the end of the day, you cannot tell me that a minister who is responsible, and the Prime Minister cannot do something about that. You cannot tell me. The Fair Trade Commission has a minister. It is in the definition section, and I think they say minister, the Minister of Trade and Industry. You cannot tell me that all these years where people are suffering because they do not have access to, because they cannot afford the drugs, which the lady is saying is, what the lady is saying is right. She doesn't say it's just about her health, it's about a life-saving drug. And you cannot tell me that the government is unaware of the fact that they have this behavior. In fact, one of the things that came out of, I think, either this investigation or a prior investigation, the number of small farmers that had to close down. They've had to close down. So you're talking, that is where it's called anti-monopolistic, because having a monopoly in of itself may not be wrong, but when it reduces the competition, keeps people out of the market, you can't go and say, okay, well, I can't get it from A, but I can get it from B. But when you can only get it from A, what does that say to you? That means you have to pay the price. It means you have to, and if they don't have it, what are you going to do? Just as what Sean has said. If there are supply chain issues, if there are a number of issues, what are you to do? You are putting people's lives at risk. And I do not think that a government, we are not talking about cars, we're not talking about furniture, we're talking about people's lives. And generally speaking, it is persons who have to take this medication for the rest of their life. For the rest of their life, the cardiovascular, the heart disease, the diabetes, the cancer drugs. These are the drugs that keep you alive. And to think that the government and the government, you're answering Mr. San Fernando, yes, the government sits by and does nothing. There's not only commission, there's omission. And to omit to act is to allow a situation that is unsustainable and is really unkind, to say the very least.
Just the point on small pharmacies closing down. The reason why that's an issue is when these small pharmacies close down, they're not replaced by big brand pharmacies, right? Why that matters. When those locations close down, you lose part of your distribution network, right? And by doing so now, think about who we talk about. We're not talking about 20-year-olds. We're not talking about 30-year-olds, right? And of course, given the traffic congestion, driving around town, the country is not that simple. But when you're a pensioner, you may or may not have a car. You have diabetes. You may or may not have the ability to walk comfortably, to walk long distances, the ability to go and travel freely, right? When your pharmacy options now become limited and you have to go to the big brand name pharmacy, which is a one-stop shop, that's nice, but it's not necessarily conveniently located to you. Now you have accessibility problems, right? What happens if you have no one to look out for you? And all of a sudden you fall ill and you can't travel. What are you going to do when your medication runs out, you fall ill, you can't travel, and you don't have a grandson or a niece or somebody to do for you? That's exactly, that's real life. I have more to say to close up, then we have some comments to take, but we'll take St. Anne's quick. This has to be the last call. Caller, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, good evening.
Okay, second to last call. Morning, morning.
I firmly believe in all that you are saying is very correct. However, the small pharmacies who are complaining, they are at fault too, because they are not marking up within the law. Some of them are marking up several times higher. I'm a retired person. I'm with a heart patient and so on. The other medication I was taking, generic, at about $25 a tablet. When I couldn't get it generic, I had to go and buy the real one. It was nearly $200-something. And if you went from pharmacy to pharmacy and check, that price for that item varied by $100. So the pharmacies are all sorts of.
I can answer that.
With markups.
All right, caller.
Can I just say very quickly?
Caller, because there's another caller waiting. Do you have another point you can make quick?
Because I'll be agreeing with him, but the difference is that it's regulated. So you can complain to the Fair Trade Commission, which happens in, actually, if you look at the Fair Trade Commission website in Jamaica, they have a list of cases where they have come to a decision agreement. And many of these cases are dealing with either false advertising or markups that are too high. So you do have a remedy, because it is clear that it's regulated. Where it is not regulated is the wholesale and distribution sector.
All right, thank you.
All right, caller. Yeah, sorry about that. We do have another call waiting, and we're running out of time. So we'll take Claxton Bay next quick. Claxton Bay, good morning.
Yeah.
Morning.
Yeah. Hi, good morning. Sean and Mr. Shera. Yeah. You know, this is why you see, I ask myself, look at the kind of problems we have in this country here. We have real problems, boy. What we doing in Venezuela, boy? What we doing in other people's business? That's what we put this government there for. We put the government to fix these problems in our country. This is what we want done. So much of problems, boy. Watch out. I have a daughter who have cancer. We just have to travel to. And when you walk the street is nasty. Clarkson Bay have a heap of pigs. Pigs, no matter how high you put the rubbish, they're like human beings. They're going up and taking down the rubbish, and it all in the road is rubbish. You understand? Nasty. Clarkson Bay. How many name of God? We could want to go and clean somebody else's house when our house is so nasty, so dirty, so stink. You understand? And I keep asking myself, why it is we have to interfere with other people's business instead of dealing with our business?
Caller, I'll have
Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Sorry for that, we're running out of time. I'll just say this. We are technically not practically involved with anything to do with Venezuela, right? We just have the Prime Minister basically saying, we would like help with stopping drugs. Yeah. But we haven't actually been involved in anything. Now, if you want to say yet, by all means say yet, which means in the future, maybe we will be. But right now, to be fair to the government, they haven't done anything yet with regards to that. Now, if you want to say they are still being distracted perhaps by the situation, I would argue that regardless of what their position was, it would be a distraction anyway. They do have to monitor it and be aware and try to have some sort of contingency planning just because of our proximity, whether they support the Americans or not. This is not something that they could just turn a blind eye to and focus domestically.
You see how quickly you can...
Right. So one thing, with regards to what the small pharmacies, I'll just say this. One of the things we do have to question, when things are working properly and something goes wrong, we could say, oh, you're wrong for that. But when you have too many things that are not working properly and something is going wrong, sometimes you have to ask the question, and in the case of these small pharmacies, to what extent is some of the behavior trying to compensate for an unhealthy environment? I'm not saying that it is, I'm just saying you have to ask the question. Think about the PH taxis. PH taxis are technically not legal. But if you don't have PH taxis, say H taxis don't run after a certain hour, how people going to get to them? Right? We have an unhealthy environment that is then thus, some could say exploited, some can say, look, the service has to be provided. And the government turns a blind eye to it, right? Rather than trying to find a solution, it's like, let's just leave it alone, and technically, the wrong thing is being done. So, but I get what you're saying, you can't, it's not as though for one side to be wrong, the other side has to be the side of the angels. Everybody could have their share of issues. The thing with regards to Mrs. San Fernando's last question, I'll just say this. While the details might be different, and the motivations, and the means, and the whys, and what have you might be different, basically, what can happen when you have monopolistic things, and you have too much control concentrated, too much economic control concentrated, is basically, you could get a similar situation to Clico. That's basically what it comes down to. Something that is big, something that overextends. In the States, it was direct real estate. With Clico, it might have been tied to that to some extent, on top of other things. And then now, something goes wrong. It doesn't matter what it is. Something goes wrong, and all of a sudden, your economy is vulnerable. And then on top of that, we talk about pharmaceuticals. Now, I just want to get back to this. One, there's wide implications about the FTC. And not just about pharmaceuticals, but wider issues with regards to the economy. Because it seems as though private business, and this goes back to things that Karen has said and I have said in the past, private business, there's lacking innovation at the high end. The monopolies wanting to be vertically integrated also cuts out a lot of the middlemen. That stifles entrepreneurship, right? And then, of course, now that limits job opportunities, job growth, right? The government can't employ everybody. So we're not moving forward enough on the private sector front, because right now it's all about vertical integration, controlling your sector from top to bottom, right? And using that control to leverage it in various ways, which is when it's nice. When it's not nice, it's exploiting people in different ways. All right, we do have some comments to get through really quick, so let's just go in whatever order you want to do. People get sick or sicker and need medication when they don't have $1 or know where their next dollar is coming from. I mean, listen, I understand that, There's also the fact that you could get external economic shocks that could cause people at the fringe, at the margins of economic prosperity to be in trouble, and that's not necessarily the fault of the pharmacy companies, except this is why the FTC needed to conduct the investigation. You have to have oversight and transparency and accountability, right? To then say, listen, it was market forces, there's nothing we could do. But we can't just assume that or accept that. We need the oversight third party to look into that. Next comment. Let's face it, we all know the finances of the P&M, same group of businessmen. Well, I mean, this is chalk this up to one of those things everybody knows. We can't necessarily prove, so technically we don't know as a statement of fact. And again, this is why looking into things so that we could determine to what extent.
What we don't want is exchange, yeah?
Yes.
That's what we do not want, right?
Finances.
So what we do not want, and let me just make that very clear. Yes, I'm happy to see the Prime Minister, what she has said. I'm happy to see what Speaker Jack Singh has said. But we do not want an exchange. We do not want the 1% to change for another 1%, because ultimately it is the man in the street, as I call him, that ultimately suffers. And that's what we don't want to occur at all.
We're not saying the people who make up the 1%, how dare they. We're saying monopolies. Yes. We're saying these things as exist regardless of who controls them. Let's go in that comment quick. What this government has done in this short time has lost the trust by unsupported sections of the population that will take decades to reverse. In the past, there was a trust that they would do the right for all the people. The administration has shown there, or was a trust. Okay, this administration has shown otherwise. I actually thought initially that it was WASA, right? And I was going to say, well, look, at the end of the day, even if you disagree with the 10%, they actually campaigned, so everybody knew, all the voters knew, and voted them anyway with regards to the 10%. But with regards to the trust, I'll say this. I think it's not so much that the people have an issue with the government. I think it's because the government is making changes, not always explaining it, and then there's other things on top of that. I don't want to get it. We have time to get into that.
I'm not going to get into it, but I do tend to agree with that person who made that contribution.
No, but the point I mean to say is there will be parts of the country who support the government who don't view it this way, and the divide is growing. The divide, I think, is much more than it was before the election. What make of that what you will. Let's go on to the next topic. I complained about a bank to the financial ombudsman. The reply was there's a lot of checks to clear, that's why it took 6 days. And I don't know if it was like same bank to same bank or what have you, but I do think this is...
I can't really comment on that.
Yeah, but I'll say this. I suspect there's some degree of, I don't want to rock the boat. You got your stuff. Why are you complaining for?
But you know what I do commend, and these are 3 of the speakers. One who spoke to the pharmacy board, the other one who spoke to... In other words, they took it upon themselves to investigate and to get answers. So when they come to that roadblock, then they can say, well, this is why we have done all we can. What else do you expect us to do? And I think we have to commend people who do that, and we want to encourage people to do that, because the more that we have people who are not just sitting by and being victims, so to speak, of a system, the fact that you are willing to get up and to do something, and then you can say to those who are committees or investigations, listen, I did do this. I did go to the FCC. I did go to the pharmacy board. I did, and this is what they said to me. So what am I supposed to do now? And that is where you can then leave it to the politicians, who would then hopefully be able to do the right thing.
Now, I don't want us to turn into a culture of, oh my gosh, I stubbed my toe, I'm going to sue you. I'm going to sue your office. How dare you have a railing that was just inconveniently in my way? How dare your door opens and out instead of in, or in instead of out? I don't want us to become an overly litigious society, but we don't have a culture of basically accountability and standing up for our rights, right? We want someone else to stand up for us. We want the politicians that we complain about to stand up for us. How does that make sense? How does that make sense, right? Think about it this way as well. When we have issues in the Ministry of Health, the doctors, they can't say nothing. When we have issues with the Ministry of Education, the teachers, they can't say nothing. In fact, we know that the teachers were told that they can't say nothing. The doctors were told that they can't say nothing, right? Who gives us some level of explanation as to why the borders are open? When everyone is complaining, oh, well, the drugs and the guns and the drugs and the guns. Right, but the borders are open. What are you going to do about that? There was a pandemic, the borders are open. You had people stuck outside all over the world, Europe, South America, random places. They didn't necessarily have means to take care of themselves. They couldn't come home. But yeah, the borders were open, and we never got an explanation for that at all, right? And part of that, I believe, is nobody wants to rock the boat. Hey, the status quo is what the status quo is. When in Rome, just the Roman. So this is the public sector, this is the political realm, right? Why am I going to rock the boat for? And then on top of that, the people who are just trying to get through with their lives, doing a 9 to 5, they have their job, whether to whatever degree it's connected to whatever the situation is, I can't complain I might lose my job. And then a lot of us are muzzled. A lot of us are muzzled. To some extent, the media has to deal with the financial pressure of, what am I going to say if I want advertising dollars from the same people that we're going to write negative stories about, right?
And the curious thing about that is that, you know, when you say that, in effect, by muzzling them or preventing them from telling a story, really does, in a sense, continue the lack of transparency,
yes,
the lack of accountability. But by allowing them, in a sense, to continue to get the sponsorship, allows them to function at a certain level so that they can take the chance. As I always say, not that I am partial to any newspaper, it's just that I have felt that with the Express, they are willing. I'm not saying the others are not, because I have not tried them, so let me just put that out there. But, you know, when you talk about the fourth estate and the willingness to bring things into the public domain, we can really, I think that the Express really does live up to that. I do not have shares in the Express. I do not own anything in the Express. So let me just put that out there, just in case.
And I'll just end with this, because I say this about the democratic process. Yes. Part of that also is the public needs to not easily accept things that stifle stories, or basically blocks, right, or intimidates conversation, bringing up issues, speaking out and highlighting issues, right? If you tolerate it because it's like, oh, well, there's nothing we could do, right? We'll still vote for the same people we vote for. We'll still buy the same guns we same buy for, etc., etc. Oh, well, you know what? You see what happened to our newspaper? They spoke out like X, Y, and Z, and then they were shunned by the business community and they closed down. That is to your detriment, to our detriment. And if we tolerate it and allow it, well, then, you know, things could only technically get worse. And that's just one of the other things with monopolies. But we don't have time to explain how the monopolistic power gets to further control. You could figure it out on your own. We do have to cut the show there and the show here. So I want to thank all the callers and the comments. A lot of engagement on this topic, which just shows perhaps people, all you need is a little bit of inspiration, and you should speak out. Don't be a bit more bold. Write to the newspapers, call in more on shows, right? Yes, technically I'm supposed to say call in to Talking Point. But the citizen side of me, as Mr. Sanfano said, is going to say, no, engage everybody, everywhere you could find it, and encourage dialogue on critical issues like this. All right, we're over time. Thanks, Karen, for joining me once again. Folks, this is Talking About the WSN show. Michael Small reminding you to stay safe. Remember your allegiance to the public and to each other. Don't forget it's nice to be nice. Have a good day. We'll see each other tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Good morning and welcome back to Dollars and Cents.